The billionaire CEO discovers his surrogate is a virgin. What he does next changes everything. Stop. Just stop talking, Graham. Madeline, listen to me. No. You listen to me. I'm standing here, 8 months pregnant with your child, and you're telling me to hide? To let them destroy me while you save your precious empire? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Because your lawyers just spent 45 minutes explaining how easy it would be to make me disappear from this story. How convenient it would be if I just took the blame. There was silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then Graham Hale, billionaire, CEO, the man who'd built empires with his bare hands, said the words that would cost him everything. I'm saying I won't let them touch you. Not your reputation, not your dignity, not a single hair on your head. They can have the company. They can have the towers and the stock and the legacy. But they can't have you. Graham, you'll lose everything. I already lost everything the moment I started thinking of you as a contract instead of a person. Let me do this one thing right. Pause. Picture this. A virgin carrying a billionaire's baby through a medical procedure that should have been impossible. A man who controlled boardrooms but couldn't control his own heart. And a scandal so explosive it turned Manhattan into a war zone. This is that story. But before we dive into this absolute chaos, and trust me, it gets wild, tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it? Drop it in the comments right now. I'll be down there interacting with every single one of you because this community, we're building something special here. And listen, if you're new to love and luxury, hit that subscribe button immediately. I'm Dr. Mason, and on this channel, we don't do basic love stories. We do fate, we do second chances, we do the kind of plot twists that make you pull over your car just to keep listening. Now, let's rewind to where this impossibility actually began. Graham Hale didn't believe in fate. He believed in quarterly projections, market dominance, and the kind of strategic execution that turned competitors into cautionary tales. At 38, he'd already accomplished what most men spend lifetimes chasing. Everest Dynamics, his baby, his fortress, his legacy, sat like a glass crown on Manhattan's skyline. From his office on the 47th floor, he could see 3 boroughs and count at least 5 companies he'd personally destroyed. Sir, you have the Singapore acquisition team on line 1, Senator Morrison on line 2, and your 2 p.m. is here. Graham didn't look up from his screens. Tell Singapore we're not budging on valuation. Tell the senator I'll call him back. And who's my 2 p.m.? His assistant, Caroline, hesitated. Dr. Reeves. From the fertility clinic. Graham's fingers stopped mid-type. 3 years since the accident, and he still hated that word. Fertility. Like he was some agricultural project instead of a man who'd survived a collision that should have killed him. Send him in. Dr. Reeves entered with the careful optimism of someone delivering news to a man who ate uncertainty for breakfast. Mr. Hale, we've completed the final candidate screening. And we found someone. Actually, she's perfect. 29, excellent health markers, psychological evaluation came back stable, background check clean. No complications in her medical history. Graham finally looked up. Why do you sound uncertain? I'm not uncertain. She's objectively the best candidate we've seen. Dr. Reeves slid a folder across the mahogany desk. She's not what you'd expect. Graham opened the file. The photo showed a young woman with dark hair pulled back simply, minimal makeup, eyes that looked directly at the camera with neither aggression nor submission. Clarity. Madeline Pierce. 29. Registered nurse. Brooklyn. What am I supposed to be seeing here, doctor? Genuine. In my 20 years of handling surrogacy arrangements, I've seen every type. The ones doing it purely for money, the ones with savior complexes, the ones with ulterior motives. This one. He tapped the photo. She's doing it to pay off her mother's medical debt and get her siblings through school. No agenda beyond survival. Graham studied the photo longer than necessary. There was something in her expression, a kind of quiet dignity that money couldn't buy and power couldn't fake. Set up the meeting. You're going to do what? Madeline Pierce sighed, pulling the phone away from her ear as her best friend Tessa's voice hit decibels only dogs should hear. It's not that dramatic, Tess. Not that dramatic. Maddie, you're going to carry a stranger's baby for 9 months. That's like renting out your internal organs. It's called surrogacy, and people do it all the time. Madeline shifted the phone to her other ear while stirring pasta on her apartment's ancient stove. The compensation is $250,000. Do you know what I could do with that? Buy a personality. Tessa shot back. Girl, you won't even date Marcus the cute pharmacist because you're too busy, but you'll carry a billionaire's baby? Make it make sense. Madeline smiled despite herself. Marcus is nice, but he's also got 3 ex-girlfriends who still call him, a podcast about cryptocurrency, and he vapes. Those are 3 separate deal breakers. You're deflecting. I'm being practical. Madeline turned off the stove, her smile fading. Mom's latest treatment isn't covered by insurance. Joey's tuition is due in 6 weeks. And Shanice needs a new inhaler prescription that costs $400. So yes, I'm going to use the one asset I have that someone actually wants to pay for. The silence on the other end was loaded with things Tessa wouldn't say. You've given up too much already. When is it your turn? Don't you want something for yourself? Instead, Tessa said quietly, will you at least be safe? Like, is this legal and everything? Completely legal. Medical clinic, lawyers, contracts, the whole thing. It's actually really clinical. I barely even meet the father. Just medical procedures, 9 months, hand over the baby, and I can finally breathe for the first time in a decade. And you're okay with that? Growing a whole human and then just giving it away? Madeline looked around her tiny kitchen, the water stain on the ceiling from the upstairs neighbor's leak, the medical bills held by magnets on the fridge, the photo of her family from before her father left and her mother got sick. I've been giving pieces of myself away for years, Tess. At least this time, I'm getting something back. The conference room at Everest Dynamics felt designed to intimidate. Everything was sharp angles and cold surfaces, floor-to-ceiling windows showing a view that reminded you exactly how far you were from the ground. Madeline sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent, hands folded in her lap, posture straight despite the 3 people staring at her like she was a specimen. Graham Hale sat at the head of the table, perfectly still in a suit that could have funded a small country. To his left, a lawyer with silver hair and an expression that suggested he'd seen everything and been impressed by nothing. To his right, Dr. Reeves, at least attempting warmth. Ms. Pierce, the lawyer began, I'm Martin Schaefer, Mr. Hale's legal counsel. We appreciate you coming in today. Of course. Madeline's voice was steady. She'd dealt with enough difficult hospital administrators to know how to hold her ground in uncomfortable rooms. You've reviewed the contract terms? Yes. All 47 pages? All 47 pages, Madeline confirmed. Including the appendices about medical procedures, compensation schedule, confidentiality agreements, and the section about what happens if I develop a sudden allergy to shellfish. She caught the tiniest twitch at the corner of Graham's mouth, which was oddly specific, but thorough. Martin didn't smile. And you understand this is a strictly professional arrangement? No parental rights, no ongoing relationship with the child, no contact with Mr. Hale beyond medically necessary appointments? Something flickered in Madeline's chest, not hurt, exactly, but a recognition of exactly how transactional this was. I understand. Good. Mr. Hale, do you have any questions for the candidate? This was the first time Graham spoke, and his voice was different than Madeline expected. Quieter. More measured. Why are you doing this? Martin interjected immediately. Sir, her motivations are already documented in the... I can read a file, Martin. I'm asking her directly. Madeline met his eyes. They were gray, she noticed. Sharp but not cold. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I'm doing this because my mother has stage 3 cancer and the experimental treatment that might save her costs $80,000 out of pocket. Because my brother is the first person in our family to go to college, and I refuse to let him drop out for lack of $30,000 in tuition. Because my little sister has asthma and her medications keep getting more expensive. And because I'm 29 years old, and I've spent the last decade sacrificing everything to keep my family afloat, and this," she gestured at the contract, "is the first opportunity I've had to actually solve our problems instead of just treading water until we drown." The silence that followed was different than before. Graham leaned forward slightly. "And you're comfortable with the process? The medical procedures, the pregnancy, the impersonal nature of it?" Madeline almost laughed. "Mr. Hale, I'm a night shift ICU nurse. I'm very comfortable with impersonal medical procedures. This is actually significantly less invasive than a regular Tuesday at work." This time, Graham definitely smiled. Small, brief, but real. "One more question." "Okay." "The contract states you'll have no contact with the child after birth. Can you actually do that? Carry a baby for 9 months and then walk away?" It was the same question Tessa had asked, but coming from him, it felt different. Like he was asking if she could handle the thing he wasn't sure he could handle. Madeline chose her words carefully. "Mr. Hale, I've spent my entire adult life loving people I had to let go of. My father when he left. My childhood when I became my sibling's second parent at 19. My own dreams when reality demanded otherwise. I'm not saying it won't be hard. I'm saying I'm already an expert at hard." Graham held her gaze for a long moment, then turned to Martin. "She's approved. Draw up the final contracts." 3 weeks later, Madeline found herself in a medical office that looked more like a luxury hotel than a clinic. Soft lighting, classical music, a persistent smell of lavender that was probably scientifically designed to reduce anxiety. It wasn't working. "Ms. Pierce, you'll feel some discomfort, but nothing painful. The procedure takes about 15 minutes. Dr. Sarah Chen, the fertility specialist, had the kind of calm professionalism that Madeline recognized from her own work, the voice you used when you needed people to trust you with their most vulnerable moments. "I've reviewed worse Yelp reviews for dental cleanings," Madeline joked. "I'll survive." Dr. Chen smiled. "Mr. Hale will be in the waiting area if you need. He's here?" Madeline couldn't hide her surprise. "He insisted. Said something about—" Dr. Chen checked her notes. "If she's going through this, the least I can do is be in the building." She looked up. "He's been remarkably invested in the process. Most intended parents in these arrangements are far more distant." Madeline didn't know what to do with that information, so she filed it away under things that aren't your business and focused on the procedure. Dr. Chen was right. It was uncomfortable but brief. Clinical. Detached. Exactly what Madeline expected. What she didn't expect was Graham Hale standing up immediately when she emerged from the procedure room, still in his obviously expensive but trying to look casual sweater and slacks. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone just turkey-basted me with science," Madeline said before she could stop herself. Graham's shocked laugh echoed in the waiting room. Even Dr. Chen, professional to her core, cracked a smile. "Well, that's certainly one way to describe IVF," Graham managed. Madeline felt her face heat. "Sorry. Inappropriate humor is my stress response. At work, we call it cope or cry. Don't apologize. I just spent 3 hours in a board meeting about supply chain logistics. Your description was significantly more entertaining." There was an awkward pause where neither seemed sure what to do next. Dr. Chen saved them. "Ms. Pierce, you're free to go home. Rest for 24 hours, no strenuous activity. We'll do blood work in 2 weeks to confirm conception." Graham cleared his throat. "I have a car waiting. I can give you a ride to—" "I'm taking the subway," Madeline said automatically. "The subway," Graham repeated, like she'd suggested traveling by catapult. "It's public transportation, Mr. Hale. Millions of people use it daily without incident. You just had a medical procedure. I just had a 15-minute appointment. I've worked 12-hour shifts with pneumonia. I can handle the F-train." They stared at each other, the billionaire who controlled empires and the nurse who controlled exactly nothing but refused to be controlled. Finally, Graham said, "Compromise. Let the car take you home. You don't have to talk to me. You can even pretend I'm not there. But please don't take the subway while he paused, while my future child is in its first hours of development. The possessive way he said my child hit differently than Madeline expected. Fine, she conceded. But I'm not making small talk. Wouldn't dream of it. They made small talk the entire 45-minute drive to Brooklyn. You've got to be kidding me. Madeline stared through the peephole of her apartment door at Graham Hale, Billionaire CEO, standing in her third-floor walk-up hallway like a very expensive, very lost tourist. She opened the door. Did someone die? What? Oh. I came to. Graham looked genuinely confused by the question. Why would someone have died? Because that's the only reason I can think of for you to be in my apartment building. How did you even get past the front door? The lock's been broken for 3 months. That's concerning from a security standpoint. Welcome to Brooklyn. What are you doing here, Mr. Hale? Graham. And I came to check on you. Make sure the environment is suitable for the pregnancy. Madeline crossed her arms, very aware that she was in yoga pants and an old nursing school t-shirt with a coffee stain. You sent someone to take photos and do an assessment last month. They declared it adequate. I wanted to see for myself. Why? It was a simple question, but Graham didn't seem to have a simple answer. He actually shifted his weight like a normal nervous human, and said, "Can I come in?" Against her better judgment, Madeline stepped aside. Graham entered her 600-square-foot studio like an anthropologist entering an undiscovered cave. His eyes moved over everything: the kitchen table that doubled as a desk, the couch that probably doubled as her bed, the walls covered in family photos, and crayon drawings from her siblings. You read, he said, stopping at her bookshelf. Yes, words on pages. Revolutionary concept. Graham actually laughed. I deserved that. He scanned the titles. Toni Morrison, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Mary Oliver. And Gray's Anatomy? The medical textbook, not the TV show. It's for work. You read poetry and advanced medical texts. That's an interesting combination. I contain multitudes, Madeline quoted. Walt Whitman. Do you read, Mr. Hale, or just quarterly reports? Graham, he corrected again. And I used to read. Before the company ate my life. He pulled out a worn copy of 100 Years of Solitude. This was my favorite in college. Past tense? I haven't had time for fiction in 15 years, that's sad. Graham looked at her, surprised. Most people would say that's successful. Most people are wrong about a lot of things. They stood there, him holding her book, her very aware that this was the longest non-medical conversation they'd had. How are you feeling? Graham asked, putting the book back carefully. Any symptoms? Morning sickness is a liar. It's actually all-day sickness. I'm exhausted constantly. My boobs hurt. And yesterday I cried during a commercial about dish soap. Madeline paused. But the baby's healthy. That's what matters, right? You matter too. The words hung between them, too intimate for a business arrangement. Madeline cleared her throat. Do you want coffee? I was about to make some. Decaf, obviously. I'd like that. It started accidentally. Madeline had taken to walking along the East River path in the evenings. Her doctor said exercise was good for the pregnancy, and it was the only time her brain stopped running through medical bills and what-ifs. She definitely didn't expect to see Graham Hale sitting on a bench at sunset, staring at the Manhattan skyline like it held answers to questions he hadn't asked yet. Are you following me? She asked, stopping in front of him. Graham looked up, startled. What? Oh. I come here sometimes to think. You come to Brooklyn to think. The view of Manhattan is better from here. More perspective. Madeline sat down without being invited. At 4 months pregnant, standing felt overrated anyway. Perspective on what? Graham hesitated, then seemed to decide honesty was simpler than evasion. Whether I'm building something worth inheriting or just a very expensive monument to my own ego. Heavy thoughts for a Tuesday evening. What are you doing here? Walking. Doctor's orders. Also, my apartment gets about 15 minutes of actual sunlight daily, so I'm basically photosynthesizing out here. Graham smiled. How's the pregnancy? Do you actually want to know, or are you asking because it's polite? I actually want to know. So Madeline told him. About the weird cravings, pickles and strawberry ice cream, separately, thank God. About how her scrubs barely fit anymore. About the first time she felt a baby move and how it felt like bubbles or butterflies or some other inadequate description that didn't capture the strangeness of growing an entire human. And Graham listened. Really listened. Not like a CEO processing information for strategic advantage, but like a person who genuinely wanted to understand. Can I ask you something? Madeline said as the sun started its final descent. Sure. Why do you care? Not about the baby. I get that part. But about me. The medical team sends you reports. You don't need to show up at my apartment or find me on random benches. So why? Graham was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower, more honest than she'd heard. When I had the accident, the one that led to all of this, I was in Tokyo closing a deal worth $800 million. I was working 20-hour days, hadn't had a real conversation in months. Couldn't tell you the last time I did something just because I wanted to rather than because it advanced some goal. He paused. The night before the crash, I was on the phone with my team, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time someone asked me how I was feeling and meant it personally, not professionally. That's lonely. That's choice. I built that isolation brick by brick. He looked at her. You asked me a question during our first meeting. If I could handle the impersonal nature of this arrangement. Honestly, I don't think I can. That baby you're carrying is the first thing in my life that isn't about expansion or acquisition or winning. It's about connection, family, something real. So I'm your rehabilitation project? No. Graham stopped, seeming to struggle for words. You're the first person in years who talks to me like I'm a human being instead of a bank account or a business opportunity. It's refreshing. You're refreshing. Madeline's heart did something complicated in her chest. I'm also your employee, technically, and pregnant with your child. This is ethically complicated, Graham. He noticed she used his first name. So did she. I know. We should probably keep appropriate boundaries. We probably should. Neither of them moved. Same time next week? Madeline finally asked. Graham smiled. I'll be here. Madeline, I know this is ridiculous, but I need pickles and ice cream. She sent the text to Tessa and immediately regretted it. 2:17 a.m. Her best friend was definitely asleep. 3 dots appeared. But the response wasn't from Tessa. Graham, together or separately? Madeline stared at her phone. She'd texted Graham by mistake. His number was in her contacts for emergencies, and apparently her pregnancy brain had misfired. Madeline, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That was meant for Tessa. Graham, I'm already awake. Together or separately? Madeline, what? Graham, the pickles and ice cream. Do you want them mixed together or as separate food groups? Madeline, separately. I'm weird, but I'm not a monster. Graham, good to know. I'll be there in 40 minutes. Madeline, you absolutely will not. Graham, I'm already in the car. Madeline, Graham, dill or bread and butter? Madeline, this is insane. Graham, dill or bread and butter? Madeline, dill. 43 minutes later, Graham appeared at her door with a bag from what was definitely not a 24-hour bodega. Where did you even get this? Madeline asked, pulling out a jar of artisanal dill pickles and a pint of what the label claimed was small-batch strawberry gelato. I know a place. At 2 a.m.? I know a place that opens when I call them. Madeline shook her head but couldn't stop smiling. That's either impressive or deeply concerning. Can't it be both? They ended up on her fire escape, the closest thing her apartment had to outdoor space, eating pickles and gelato under a Brooklyn sky that was trying its best against the light pollution. Can I ask you something personal? Graham said after several minutes of comfortable silence. You just brought me pickles at 2 a.m. I think we've crossed into personal territory. Fair point. He ate a spoonful of gelato. Why don't you date? Tessa mentioned something once about you being too busy, but it seems like more than that. Madeline was quiet, deciding how honest to be. After my dad left, I became the de facto parent to Joey and Shanice. I was 19. Then Mom got sick, and I was working full-time, doing nursing school at night, raising 2 kids, managing medical care. She shrugged. Romance requires time and energy I didn't have. And by the time things stabilized enough that I theoretically could date, I'd become this person who was really good at taking care of everyone else and really bad at letting anyone take care of me. That sounds exhausting. It is what it is. That's not an answer. That's what people say when they're tired of explaining pain. Madeline looked at him, this billionaire sitting on her rusty fire escape in probably $1,000 casual wear, and saw something unexpected, recognition. You do the same thing, she said. What? Hide behind competence. I do it with caretaking, you do it with business. Same armor, different uniform. Graham set down his gelato. When did you get so good at reading people? I see you nursing. You learn to see what people aren't saying. It's usually more important than what they are. And what am I not saying right now? Madeline held his gaze. That you're lonely. That you built an empire but can't remember why. That you're terrified of being a father because you're not sure you know how to love something you can't control or acquire. The silence stretched, heavy with truth. I had a father who measured success in profit margins and weakness in anything that resembled emotion, Graham finally said. He died of a heart attack in his office at 62, alone, still working. At his funeral, hundreds of people came. Business partners, competitors, employees. Know how many came because they actually loved him? How many? 0. Including me. I respected him, feared him, wanted to impress him. But love? Graham shook his head. I don't think he knew how to teach that. And I'm terrified I don't know how to learn it. Madeline reached over and took his hand. It was the first time they'd touched outside of medical necessity. The fact that you're afraid of being a bad father means you probably won't be. Bad fathers don't worry about that. Graham looked at their joined hands, then at her. How did you get so wise? Suffering is an excellent teacher. I don't recommend it, but it's effective. They sat there, hands linked, until Madeline yawned so widely her jaw cracked. Graham stood. You need sleep. So do you. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Or retired. Whichever comes first. That's dark. You said suffering is an excellent teacher. I'm very well educated. Madeline laughed, walking him to the door. At the threshold, Graham turned back. Thank you. For the honesty. For the fire escape therapy session. For being you. Thank you for the 2 a.m. pickles. That's true friendship right there. Is that what we are? Friends. Madeline smiled. I think we might be. Is that allowed in the contract? I have no idea. But I'm willing to risk it if you are. Good night, Graham. Good night, Madeline. Absolutely not. Madeline. I said no. I'm 6 months pregnant, I have nothing to wear, and I don't belong at a charity gala full of people whose shoes cost more than my rent. Graham stood in her apartment, a regular occurrence now, which should probably concern her more than it did, holding a garment bag and wearing his I'm going to win this argument face. First, you're beautiful and pregnancy makes you glow. Second, I sent a stylist with dress options. Third, you belong anywhere you choose to be, and I'd like you to choose to be there. Why? Because it's for the Children's Hospital Foundation, and you're a medical professional who actually cares about patient care. Your perspective would be valuable. That's your professional reason. What's the real one? Graham sighed. Because I attend 50 of these things a year, and they're unbearable. Everyone's performing wealth and philanthropy instead of actually being human. You're the only person I know who's constitutionally incapable of being fake. I'd like one evening where I can have a real conversation. So I'm your emotional support human? If you want to phrase it that way, yes. Madeline wanted to say no. Should have said no. But something in his expression, vulnerability mixed with hope, made her sigh. Fine. But if anyone's rude about the pregnancy, I'm using my condition to make them uncomfortable. I've mastered the art of talking about cervical dilation at inappropriate times. Graham laughed. Please do. The stylist had sent 3 dress options. Madeline chose the simplest, midnight blue, empire waist to accommodate her belly, elegant without trying too hard. When Graham picked her up, his expression made her feel like she'd chosen correctly. You look. He seemed to search for words. Like you. Is that a compliment? It's the highest one I have. The gala was exactly as overwhelming as Madeline feared. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, conversations about vacation homes and stock portfolios and who was sleeping with whom. Graham navigated it all with practiced ease, but Madeline noticed how his hands stayed at the small of her back, protective, possessive in a way that made people look twice. Graham. Darling. A woman appeared, blonde, thin in the way that suggested professional maintenance, wearing a dress that cost more than a car. Victoria, Graham said neutrally. Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend? Victoria's eyes traveled over Madeline with the assessment of someone cataloging every imperfection. Victoria Chin. This is Madeline Pierce. Madeline, Victoria is a former colleague. Former fiancé, Victoria corrected with a smile that had teeth. Though we try to stay civil. Her gaze dropped to Madeline's belly. How far along are you? 6 months. How wonderful. And the father is? The implication was clear and rude, and designed to make Madeline feel small. Before Graham could intervene, Madeline smiled sweetly. Not your concern. But tell me, Victoria, what brings you to the Children's Hospital benefit? Do you work in pediatrics? Oh no, I'm in real estate. So you're here for? The networking, mostly. And the tax write-off. How philanthropic. Graham made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Victoria's smile tightened. Well, it was lovely to meet you. Graham, we should catch up later. She glided away in a cloud of expensive perfume and barely concealed disdain. I'm sorry, Graham said immediately. Exactly what I expected, Madeline finished. Does she know about the surrogacy? No. No one outside the medical team and lawyers knows. She thinks I'm your pregnant girlfriend crashing your world. Does that bother you? Madeline considered. Less than it probably should. The evening progressed. Speeches, dinner, auction. Madeline found herself seated at Graham's table with other business leaders and their partners. She was easily a decade younger than most, visibly pregnant, and completely out of her depth. But something strange happened. When the conversation turned to the hospital's new pediatric wing, Madeline spoke up about the staffing shortages she'd witnessed, the equipment needs that weren't being met, the gap between what looked good in press releases and what actually helped kids. The table went quiet. Then the woman to her left, someone Graham had introduced as a hospital board member, leaned forward. Tell me more. Madeline did. And suddenly, she wasn't the outsider anymore. She was the expert, and they were listening. Graham watched her with something that looked like pride. Later, on the balcony overlooking the city, Graham found her stealing fresh air. You were incredible in there. I was terrified. You didn't show it. I see you nursing. You learn to fake calm during crisis. Graham stepped closer. This isn't what I expected. The gala? Is any of it? He looked at her, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. When I started this process, I thought I was solving a problem. Legacy, continuity, something to build toward. But you've become, what? Important. More important than the plan. Madeline's breath caught. Graham. I know. I know the contract, the boundaries, the impossibility of it. I know all of it. But I need you to know, you don't belong in my world because my world doesn't deserve you. My world is about acquisition and strategy and winning. You're about sacrifice and honesty and caring. You make my world look hollow. I don't know what to do with that. Neither do I. They stood there, close enough to touch, separated by contracts and complications, and every reason this was a terrible idea. "We should go back inside," Madeline finally whispered. "We should." Neither moved. Graham reached up, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. His hand lingered against her cheek. "Tell me to stop." "I should." "But are you?" Madeline closed her eyes. "No." Graham kissed her. Soft, tentative, like a question instead of a demand. And Madeline kissed him back, because some mistakes feel inevitable and this one felt like fate. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, reality came crashing back. "This complicates things," Madeline said. "Everything about you complicates things. That's what I like about you. Graham, I'm carrying your baby. I'm contractually obligated to give you that baby in 3 months and walk away. This," she gestured between them, "makes that impossible. Then maybe we renegotiate the contract." "That's not how this works. I built a billion-dollar company by figuring out how things could work, not accepting how they're supposed to work. I'm not a business deal." "I know." Graham's voice softened. "You're so much more than that. That's the problem." Madeline's phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. "Girl, where are you? You said you'd check in. Reality. Obligations. The world beyond this balcony. I need to go home. Let me alone. I need to think, Graham." "We both do." Graham nodded, stepping back. "I'll have the car. I'll take a cab. I need." She struggled for words. "I need space that isn't yours." He understood. Or pretended to. "Will you call me?" "When you're ready." "I don't know." Madeline left him on the balcony, overlooking his empire, possibly having just made the biggest mistake of either of their lives. Or maybe the only honest choice they'd made yet. Madeline didn't call. Not the next day, or the day after that. She threw herself into work, double shifts at the hospital, helping Shanice with homework over FaceTime, researching baby development like she could find answers about her feelings in medical journals. Tessa finally cornered her on day 5. "Okay, spill. You've been weird since the gala." They were in Madeline's apartment. Tessa sprawled on the couch while Madeline pretended to organize baby supplies she didn't technically get to keep. "I'm not weird. Girl, you alphabetized your spice cabinet. You own 4 spices. That's weird." Madeline sat down heavily, one hand unconsciously on her belly. The baby kicked, like even they knew she was being ridiculous. "I kissed him." Tessa sat up so fast she almost spilled her tea. "You kissed who?" "Graham. At the gala. On the balcony. And it was..." Madeline closed her eyes. "It was perfect, Tess. Like everything I didn't know I wanted. And that's the problem." "Why is that a problem?" "He clearly likes you. He brought you pickles at 2 a.m. Because in 3 months, I'm supposed to hand over this baby and walk away. That was the deal. That's what I signed up for." "Screw the deal." "I can't screw the deal. I need the money, Tessa. Mom's treatment, Joey's school, all of it depends on me completing this contract. And even if it didn't," Madeline's voice cracked. "He's a billionaire CEO. I'm a night shift nurse with $60,000 in debt. We live in different universes." "Maddie." Tessa moved to sit beside her. "That man doesn't look at you like you're from a different universe. He looks at you like you are his universe. That's just biological proximity. Pregnancy hormones. The Florence Nightingale effect in reverse. That's you being scared." Madeline was quiet because Tessa was right. "What if I let myself fall and he changes his mind?" She whispered. "What if I'm just a phase? The woman who carried his baby made him feel human for a minute, and then he goes back to his real life with people who belong there? What if you're the real thing and you're too afraid to find out?" Before Madeline could answer, her phone buzzed. "Graham, I'm not going to push. But I miss talking to you. Even if it's just about pickles or literature or why my world is hollow. Especially that last one." Madeline showed Tessa the text. "If you don't respond to that, I'm responding for you, and I will be significantly less classy." Madeline smiled despite herself, typing with shaking hands. Madeline, East River Bench. Tomorrow. 6 p.m. Graham, I'll be there. Graham was already waiting when Madeline arrived, 2 coffee cups beside him, 1 regular, 1 decaf. You remembered, she said, accepting the decaf. I remember everything about you. It's becoming a problem. Madeline sat, the silence between them loaded with everything they hadn't said. I'm scared, she finally admitted. Of me. Of this. Of wanting something I can't have. Of ruining the plan that's supposed to save my family. Of being wrong about you, or worse, being right about you and having to walk away anyway. Graham set down his coffee. Can I tell you what I'm scared of? Okay. I'm scared that you're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I met you through a contract designed to keep us apart. I'm scared that in 3 months, you're going to disappear, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life comparing every person to you and finding them lacking. I'm scared that I've finally figured out what matters, and the cost of having it might be everything I've built. So we're both terrified. Completely. Madeline laughed, slightly hysterical. This is insane. We're insane. Probably. Graham turned to face her fully. But here's what I know. I can negotiate billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. I can read market trends and predict stock movements and destroy competitors. But I can't stop thinking about you. The way you read poetry on your fire escape. How you talk to the baby when you think no one's listening. The fact that you make me want to be better than the man I've been. Graham. I'm not asking you to decide anything right now. I'm just asking, can we be honest? About this, about us, about what we're feeling. Madeline looked at this man who controlled empires but couldn't control his own heart, and made a choice. I'm falling for you, she said quietly. I've been falling since you showed up at 2 a.m. with pickles. Maybe before. And it terrifies me because I don't know how this ends without someone getting hurt. What if it doesn't end? Everything ends. Graham. Contracts, pregnancies, fairy tales. What if we write a different ending? How? I don't know yet. But I'm very good at solving impossible problems. Let me work on this one. He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. For now, can we just be us? No contract, no timeline, just 2 people who somehow found each other in the middle of the most complicated situation imaginable? Madeline knew she should say no. Should protect herself. Should remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she said okay. And kissed him like it was the most natural thing in the world. The next 4 weeks were stolen moments and quiet joy. Graham started working from Brooklyn 2 days a week, claiming it was diversifying his geographic productivity. Really, it was so he could have lunch with Madeline between her shifts. They went to her prenatal appointments together. Graham asked questions that made the doctor smile, about development stages, about what the baby could hear, about whether playing Mozart actually made babies smarter. It didn't, but Madeline caught him trying anyway. You're reading parenting books, she observed one evening, finding a stack on his car's back seat. Research. You highlighted sections. Thorough research. Graham, this one has sticky notes. He sighed. I'm terrified of being a terrible father. So yes, I'm studying it like a hostile takeover. Is that pathetic? It's the opposite of pathetic. Madeline kissed his cheek. Your baby is lucky to have you. Our baby. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Madeline froze. Graham, the contract. I know what the contract says. I'm the one who wrote it. I'm also the one who's realizing it was the worst document I've ever created. We can't just ignore legal agreements because we caught feelings. Why not? I'm very good at renegotiating terms. I'm not a merger, Graham. I know. He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. You're the person I want to build a life with. You and this baby. Not as a contract or an arrangement, but as a family. Madeline's heart was doing complicated things in her chest. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I want to rip up that contract and write a new one. One where you don't walk away. One where we figure this out together. You love me? Desperately. Completely. In a way that's extremely inconvenient for a man who built his reputation on emotional detachment. Madeline laughed and cried simultaneously, which her pregnancy hormones had made a regular occurrence. I love you too. Which is terrifying. We can be terrified together. That's the worst romantic pitch I've ever heard. I'm new at this. Give me time to workshop it. They kissed, and for a moment, everything was perfect. They had no idea that in 72 hours, their entire world would detonate. The text came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Graham's phone lit up with Caroline's message. Sir, we have a situation. Check ManhattanElite.com immediately. The gossip blog had photos. Lots of them. Graham and Madeline walking by the river. Having coffee in Brooklyn. At the gala, his hand on her back. The most damning, a shot from 3 days ago, Graham's hand on her very pregnant belly, both of them laughing. The headline, Billionaire CEO's secret baby mama. Graham Hale's hidden pregnant girlfriend exposed. The article was speculation and innuendo, but it had just enough truth to be dangerous. Graham called Madeline immediately. Have you seen it? She asked instead of hello. Her voice was shaking. I've seen it. Are you okay? There are photographers outside my building, Graham. At 7 a.m. My landlord already called asking about media disturbances. This is bad. I'm sending security to you right now. Don't talk to anyone, don't go outside, don't tell me what to do. Her fear came out as anger. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Your world touching mine and destroying everything. Madeline. I have to go. I have to call work and my mom, and, God, Graham, what did we do? We fell in love. That's not a crime. It might cost me everything anyway. She hung up. Graham stared at his phone, then made another call. Martin, I need crisis management. The PR team assembled within 2 hours. 6 people in Graham's conference room, all wearing expressions that ranged from concerned to gleefully strategic. This is manageable, his head of PR, Richard, said with the confidence of someone who'd buried worse scandals. We position her as a girlfriend, confirm the pregnancy, spin it as a private matter gone public. Humanizes you, actually. Softens your image. She's not my girlfriend, Graham said. The room went silent. Sir? Richard prompted. She's the surrogate carrying my child. You could have heard a pin drop. Martin, his lawyer, removed his glasses slowly. Graham, tell me you didn't just say what I think you said. I used a surrogate. Due to medical complications from an accident 3 years ago. Madeline Pierce is that surrogate. And yes, we've developed feelings for each other. Which wasn't the plan, but it's the truth. Oh, this is so much worse, Richard muttered. Do you understand what this looks like? Billionaire impregnates surrogate, starts relationship with her while she's contractually obligated to him? The power dynamic implications alone. It wasn't like that. It doesn't matter what it was like. It matters what it looks like. Richard was pacing now. We need to get ahead of this. Full disclosure. Control the narrative.
No.
Everyone turned to Graham.
No.
Martin repeated. I'm not throwing Madeline to the media. I'm not exposing her private medical decisions or making her defend our relationship to strangers. Find another way. Sir, with respect, there is no other way. This story is out. Either we control it or it controls us. Graham's phone buzzed. Caroline. Sir, the board is convening an emergency meeting. They want you there in 1 hour. This was about to get significantly worse. The boardroom felt different when you were on trial instead of in control. 12 members of Everest Dynamics board sat in judgment, led by Richard Chen, no relation to Victoria, but equally cold. Graham, we need absolute clarity, Richard began. Is there truth to these allegations? Which allegations specifically? That you're having a child via surrogate, and that you've engaged in a romantic relationship with said surrogate while she's under contract to you? Graham met his eyes. Yes. The murmurs started immediately. Are you out of your mind? This from Patricia Vance, the board member who'd always been his ally. Do you understand the liability? The optics? I understand all of it. I also understand that my personal life is my personal business. Not when it affects stock prices. Richard shot back. We dropped 8% this morning. Investors are spooked. They're questioning your judgment, your stability, your fitness to lead. Because I fell in love? Because you entered a legally binding contract and then violated professional boundaries with someone in a subordinate position. She's not my employee. She's contractually obligated to you. It's the same power dynamic. Graham felt his control slipping. What do you want from me? Transparency. The medical records, the surrogacy contract, everything. We need to understand the full scope of this situation before we can manage it. That's private medical information. That became public the moment you decided to romance your surrogate. Richard slammed his hand on the table. Either you cooperate with a full investigation, or we vote you out. Those are your options. Graham looked around the table. These were people he'd worked with for years, built this company alongside. And every single one of them was looking at him like he was a problem to solve rather than a person. Fine. You'll have the records by end of day. And Graham? Patricia's voice was softer but no less serious. Distance yourself from the girl. Immediately. For both your sakes. Okay, pause. If you're stressed right now, imagine how Graham and Madeline feel. And this is just the beginning. Drop a comment. What would you do in Graham's position? Protect the empire or protect Madeline? And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button because this story is about to go completely off the rails. Now, back to the disaster. Dr. Sarah Chen didn't like being summoned to legal proceedings, but here she was, in a conference room with Graham's legal team and the board's investigators. Dr. Chen, you performed the IVF procedure on Ms. Pierce, correct? I did. And the procedure was successful on the first attempt? Yes, which is fortunate but not unheard of. The investigator, a sharp woman named Laura Keating, slid a file across the table. We've had an independent medical reviewer examine the records. They've raised some concerns. Sarah's professional calm flickered. What kind of concerns? The biological markers in Ms. Pierce's initial screening indicate a hormonal profile that should have made conception via the specific IVF method you used nearly impossible. Success rate of less than 2% under normal circumstances. Sarah pulled the file closer, scanning the data she'd reviewed months ago. There were some unusual markers, but within acceptable range for proceeding. Dr. Chen. Laura leaned forward. Is there any possibility that conception occurred through means other than the IVF procedure? The implication hung in the air like poison. Absolutely not, Sarah said firmly. The timeline doesn't support it, and both parties confirmed no intimate contact. Are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking if there's a medical explanation for why a procedure with a 2% success rate worked perfectly when it shouldn't have. Medicine isn't always predictable. Or if there's a simpler explanation. One that involves Mr. Hale and Ms. Pierce having a physical relationship that predated the contract. Graham, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. That's not what happened. Then explain the medical impossibility, Mr. Hale. I can't. But I know what didn't happen. Madeline and I had no physical contact before the procedure. None during. We didn't even like each other at first. And now you're in love with her. Convenient. It's not convenient. It's complicated and messy and it's ruining my life. But it's also true. Laura closed her file. We need Ms. Pierce to come in for additional testing. Comprehensive blood work, examination, the works. If this pregnancy is the result of the IVF procedure as claimed, the medical data will prove it. If not, you're trying to prove fraud, Graham said flatly. We're trying to prove truth. I suggest you hope those are the same thing. Madeline sat in the medical examination room feeling like a specimen, which was ironic given how many times she'd been on the other side of this dynamic. Dr. Chen had been kind but professional. The questions had started routine and grown increasingly invasive. Sexual history. Previous partners. Any intimate contact during the month of conception. And then the question that made Madeline's stomach drop. Ms. Pierce, I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you ever been sexually active? Madeline felt her face flush. Why does that matter? Please just answer the question. No. I haven't. Dr. Chen's pen stopped moving. No previous partners at all? Is that really so hard to believe? Madeline's defensiveness was rising. I've been busy. Life doesn't always leave room for romance. Madeline. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle now. I'm not judging. I need to understand the medical picture. You're saying you were a virgin when we performed the IVF procedure? Yes. Madeline's voice was small. I didn't think it mattered. The procedure was clinical. It didn't occur to me that. Does it matter? Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. It might explain the biological anomalies we're seeing. What anomalies? The procedure we used should not have been successful given your hormonal profile. But if certain biological factors were present that we didn't account for. She trailed off, clearly trying to figure out how to explain medical complexity to a patient. Except Madeline was also a nurse. You're saying my virginity somehow affected the success rate? I'm saying we don't fully understand all the biological factors that influence conception. And this situation is presenting data we didn't expect. There was a knock, and Laura Keating entered with a man Madeline didn't recognize. Ms. Pierce, I'm Robert Langley, legal counsel for Everest Dynamics Board. We have some questions. The interrogation, because that's what it was, lasted 2 hours. They asked everything. Her background, her motivations, her relationship with Graham, her sexual history, her finances. They were looking for fraud, for lies, for any crack in her story. By hour 2, Madeline was crying. I didn't lie. No one asked if I was a virgin. It didn't seem relevant to a medical procedure. It's relevant when the medical procedure shouldn't have worked, Robert pressed. It's relevant when you're now in a romantic relationship with a man worth $2.4 billion. It's relevant when... The door slammed open. Graham stood there, fury radiating off him like heat. Get away from her. Mr. Hale, this is a closed proceeding. I said get away from her. Robert stood. Sir, we're trying to establish. I know exactly what you're trying to establish. That she's a liar, a fraud, a gold digger who somehow planned this entire thing. And it's bullshit. Graham, the medical evidence. The medical evidence proves that biology is more complicated than our understanding of it. It doesn't prove malice. Graham crossed to Madeline, who was shaking. Are you okay? She shook her head, tears streaming. Did they hurt you? Just my dignity. Graham turned back to Robert and Laura. You want answers? Here's the truth. Madeline Pierce is the most honest person I've ever met. She entered into a contract to save her family. She didn't lie, didn't manipulate, didn't scheme. She's guilty of nothing except being extraordinary. Mr. Hale. No. You don't get to destroy a good person because you need a convenient villain. This meeting is over. If you have further questions, direct them to my attorney. He helped Madeline to her feet. Graham, they can fire you for this, she whispered. Let them. As they left the building, Madeline finally asked the question she'd been dreading. Do you believe me? That I didn't lie, didn't plan this? Graham stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Madeline, I would believe you if you told me the sky was green and gravity was optional. I trust you more than I've ever trusted anyone, including myself. Even though it doesn't make sense? Even though the medical data says it shouldn't have worked? Especially because of that. Some things aren't supposed to make sense. They're just supposed to be true. He kissed her forehead, gentle and grounding. We'll figure this out. How? I have no idea. But we will. That was Monday. By Wednesday, The media had the medical details, and Manhattan turned into a war zone. Virgin birth scandal. Billionaire CEO's surrogate claims impossible pregnancy. Medical miracle or massive fraud. The Graham Hale mystery. Everest dynamics in freefall as CEO's personal life implodes. The headlines were everywhere. Cable news, social media, late-night comics all had takes. So let me get this straight, one late-night host joked. A billionaire CEO has a virgin pregnant with his baby through a medical procedure that shouldn't work? What is this, a medical drama or the world's most expensive Christmas pageant? The audience laughed. Graham, watching from his penthouse, didn't. His phone buzzed constantly. Stock alerts, down 23%, board members demanding his resignation, investors pulling funding, partners distancing themselves. Everest dynamics, the empire he'd spent 20 years building, was crumbling in real time. An emergency shareholder meeting was called for Friday. Martin laid out the options in Graham's office Thursday night. They're going to vote you out. The board, the shareholders, you've lost confidence. But there's a play here. I'm listening. Blame her. Claim you were deceived, that she misrepresented her medical history, that you're a victim of fraud. My team can build a case. We sue her for breach of contract, fraud, emotional distress. We paint you as the sympathetic party and her as the schemer. Your reputation recovers, the stock stabilizes, and you keep the company. And Madeline gets destroyed. Completely. But Graham, it's her or the empire. You have to choose. Graham looked at the contract on his desk, the one that started all of this. 47 pages of legal protection that protected nothing that actually mattered. What would it cost her? Specifically. Martin didn't sugarcoat it. Her reputation, her nursing license possibly, definitely her financial stability. We'd win a countersuit for damages. She'd be paying you back for years. And the media would never let her live it down. She'd be the cautionary tale, the woman who tried to trap a billionaire and failed. She'd be destroyed. Completely. But you'd survive. Graham was quiet for a long time. What if I don't want to survive without my humanity? Graham. She didn't ask for any of this. She needed money for her mother's cancer treatment. She entered a contract in good faith. And she's about to give birth to my child, our child, in 4 weeks. What kind of man would I be if I threw her to the wolves to save my stock price? The kind of man who keeps his empire. I've been that man, Martin. For 20 years. And you know what I have to show for it? Money I can't spend, respect I haven't earned, and an apartment so empty you can hear my thoughts echo. He stood, looking out at the Manhattan skyline, his kingdom, his cage. I'm not doing it. Graham, be reasonable. I'm being reasonable for the first time in my life. I'm not sacrificing a good woman for a company. I'm not choosing glass towers over actual human connection. I'm not becoming my father. Then you lose everything. No. I lose things. There's a difference. Martin closed his briefcase. I'll draft your resignation letter. Make it effective immediately. I'm not giving them the satisfaction of firing me. Graham called the press conference himself, against every piece of advice from every person who'd ever worked for him. The room was packed, financial journalists, tabloid reporters, cameras everywhere. He stood at the podium alone. No PR team, no lawyers, no script. I'm going to make this simple, he began. Everything you've heard about my personal life is essentially true. I used a surrogate to have a child. That surrogate is Madeline Pierce. And yes, we developed feelings for each other during the process. The reporters exploded with questions. Graham raised a hand. I'm not here for Q&A. I'm here to set the record straight. Madeline Pierce did not lie, did not manipulate, did not commit fraud. She entered a contract in good faith to help her family. The medical complexities of this situation are beyond my understanding, but here's what I do understand. Punishing honesty to protect power is exactly what's wrong with the world I've operated in. He paused, looking directly at the cameras. I've spent 20 years building Everest dynamics. I've made billions of dollars. I've been called a genius, a visionary, a titan of industry. And I've been miserable. Success without connection is just expensive loneliness. Achievement without humanity is just well-compensated emptiness. Mr. Hale, are you admitting to impropriety? I'm admitting to being human. I'm admitting that I fell in love with a woman who showed me what actual integrity looks like. And I'm admitting that I'd rather lose everything I've built than sacrifice her to save it. What about your shareholders? I'm resigning as CEO, effective immediately. The board can select new leadership, and the company will be better for it. As for shareholders, you invested in a company, not my soul. Those aren't for sale anymore. Mr. Hale, do you love her? Graham smiled, real and genuine. Desperately. Which is the only intelligent decision I've made in this entire situation. What will you do now? Figure out how to be the man she thinks I am. That's going to take more work than building a billion-dollar company ever did. He left the podium to chaos, questions shouted from every direction. But for the first time in years, Graham Hale felt light. He'd lost the empire. But he'd found something worth building instead. Madeline watched the press conference from the safe house Graham's security team had set up, a quiet apartment far from the media circus. She cried through the entire thing. When Graham finally arrived hours later, exhausted and officially unemployed, she met him at the door. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. You lost everything, Graham. He cupped her face gently. Oh. I lost things. I found everything. They held each other for a long time, two people who'd survived a hurricane and were still standing. What happens now? Madeline asked. Honestly, I have no idea. But I do know I want to figure it out with you. If you'll have me. Graham, I'm about to have your baby in 3 weeks. I'm contractually tied to you for life whether I like it or not. Do you like it? Madeline laughed through tears. You just threw away a billion-dollar empire for me. I'd be an idiot not to like it. Is that a yes? That's an I love you, you impossible man. I'll take it. They kissed, and somewhere in Manhattan, the news cycle moved on to the next scandal. But for Graham and Madeline, the real story was just beginning. Labor started at 3:47 a.m., which Madeline noted was incredibly on-brand for a baby who'd already caused this much chaos. Graham. She shook him awake. It's time. He went from asleep to panicked in 0.5 seconds. Time. Okay, I have the bag, I have the car keys, Where are my shoes? You're wearing them. Right. Okay. Breathing. Are you breathing? I'm breathing. You should try it. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Graham held her hand through every contraction, looking more terrified than she'd ever seen him negotiate a business deal. You're doing amazing, he kept saying. I'm literally just sitting here. The baby's doing all the work. Still amazing. 14 hours later, Madeline was significantly less amused. I hate you, she told Graham during a particularly brutal contraction. I know. This is your fault. I know. If you say, I know one more time, I'm going to. You're doing so well, the doctor interrupted. Almost there, Madeline. One more push. And then, at 5:23 p.m. on a random Thursday in October, everything changed. The baby's cry filled the room. Loud, insistent, perfect. It's a boy, the doctor announced, placing the tiny, screaming bundle on Madeline's chest. Madeline looked down at this impossibility made flesh, this child who shouldn't exist but did, and felt her heart reorganize itself around a new center of gravity. Hi, she whispered. We've been waiting for you. Graham was crying. Not subtle tears, full, unashamed sobbing as he looked at his son. Can I? He reached out tentatively. Madeline guided his hands, showing him how to support the head, how to hold this fragile, precious thing. Graham looked at his son with an expression of pure wonder. He's perfect. He's pretty great, Madeline agreed, exhausted and exhilarated. The nurse smiled. What's his name? Madeline and Graham exchanged glances. They discussed this, argued about it, landed on something that felt right. James, Graham said. James Alexander Hale. After your mentor, Madeline added. The one who taught you what actually matters. 3 days later, they were supposed to sign the final contract termination. The papers that would officially separate Madeline from the baby, complete the transaction, end the legal arrangement. The lawyer came to the hospital room with the documents. Graham looked at them, then at Madeline holding James, then back at the papers. No, he said simply. The lawyer blinked. Sir, I'm not signing. Madeline. She smiled. Not signing. But the contract stipulates. The contract, Graham interrupted, was the worst thing I ever wrote. I'm not enforcing it. Mr. Hale, legally. Legally, I'm the client and I'm refusing to complete the transaction. Draft new papers. Custody papers. Showing Madeline and I as joint parents. You can't just rewrite a surrogacy contract. Watch me. Also, draft a prenup while you're at it. Madeline's head snapped up. A what? Graham turned to her, suddenly nervous. I know this isn't romantic. We're in a hospital, you just gave birth, I don't have a ring, and I'm technically unemployed. But Madeline Pierce, will you marry me? That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. I'm workshopping it. Is that a no? It's a, you're lucky I love you. Oh, yes. Yes, you impossible man. Yes. James chose that moment to cry, as if commenting on the absurdity of his parents. The lawyer looked between them, bewildered. This is highly irregular. Get used to it, Madeline said, smiling through happy tears. This family doesn't do regular. Graham stood in the nursery of their modest lakeside house upstate, watching Madeline rock James to sleep. 6 months ago, he'd lived in a Manhattan penthouse and controlled a billion-dollar empire. Now he lived 2 hours north in a house that needed repairs, worked as a consultant for ethical startups, and spent his evenings doing dishes and changing diapers. He'd never been happier. He's asleep, Madeline whispered, placing James in the crib carefully. They tiptoed out, a routine they'd perfected over months of parenting trial and error. In the kitchen, Madeline made tea while Graham attempted to fix the leaky faucet he'd been fixing for 3 weeks. You know we could call a plumber, Madeline observed. I can do this. I built a company from nothing. I can fix a faucet. Those are not equivalent skills. I'm learning. He was. Learning to slow down, to value time over money, to measure success in babies' first smiles instead of quarterly profits. His new consulting firm was small but meaningful. He worked with startups focused on ethical business practices, medical transparency, family-friendly policies. It paid a fraction of what Everest had, but he slept better. Madeline had taken a year off from nursing to be with James, though she'd already started developing a surrogacy advocacy program, helping other women navigate the process with more transparency than she'd had. Together, they were building something different. Not an empire, but a life. Graham. Madeline's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Yeah. I'm happy. Are you happy? He abandoned the faucet, crossing to pull her close. 6 months ago, I had billions of dollars and felt empty. Now I have you, James, this ridiculous house with its broken everything, and I feel full. So yes, I'm happy. Even though you lost everything. I didn't lose everything. I lost things. There's a difference. She kissed him, soft and certain. I love you. I love you too. And tomorrow, I'm calling a plumber. Probably wise. The interview was for a small business journal, not the major publications that used to cover Graham's every move. The reporter, a young woman named Amy, sat in their living room while James, now 5, played quietly with blocks in the corner. Mr. Hale, 5 years ago you were running one of the most successful companies in Manhattan. Now you run a consulting firm from upstate New York. Any regrets? Graham smiled. Not even one. Not even losing billions. I didn't lose billions. I chose something worth more. Your family. My humanity. The billions were costing me that. Bad trade. Amy scribbled notes. Your wife, Madeline. She was your surrogate originally? She was. Now she's my partner in every sense. She runs the surrogacy advocacy program that's helped hundreds of families navigate the process ethically. And you're happy? Truly. Madeline entered with tea, catching the question. He'd better be. I didn't move to the middle of nowhere for an unhappy husband. The middle of nowhere has an excellent school system, Graham countered. And one grocery store. A very well-stocked grocery store. Amy laughed. You two are different than I expected. How so? Madeline asked. The media painted your story as this scandal. But sitting here, you just seem normal, happy. That's because it was never a scandal, Graham said. It was two people finding each other in impossible circumstances and choosing each other over easier paths. James looked up from his blocks. Daddy, what's a scandal? It's when people make a big deal about something that's actually simple. Like when I didn't want to eat vegetables. Exactly like that. After the interview, after Amy left with her story about redemption and second chances, Madeline found Graham on the porch watching the sunset over the lake. What are you thinking about? She asked, settling beside him. That kid who asked how we met. What we'll tell him when he's old enough for the real story. We'll tell him the truth. That sometimes the biggest mistakes turn into the best blessings. That love doesn't always make sense, but it's always worth it. That his parents were impossible, and so was his conception, and that made him perfect. That's pretty good. I've been practicing. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the day end and feeling grateful for the life they'd built from the ashes of the one that burned down. Madeline. Yeah. Thank you. For what? For being impossible. For being honest. For being you. For saving me. You saved yourself, Graham. I just showed up. You showed up and stayed. That's everything. Inside, James called for bedtime stories. Their life was small, normal, occasionally chaotic, and absolutely perfect. The empire was gone. But the legacy, built on love, honesty, and second chances, would last forever. Final message from Dr. Mason. So there it is. The billionaire who lost everything and gained what actually mattered. The virgin surrogate who became a wife and mother. The impossible pregnancy that became a beautiful family. Graham and Madeline's story teaches us something crucial. Success isn't measured in dollars or empires. It's measured in character, connection, and the courage to choose love over power. Graham could have sacrificed Madeline to save his company. He chose her instead. That choice cost him billions but earned him something money can't buy, a life worth living. Madeline could have walked away when things got complicated. She stayed. She fought. She built a family from chaos. And together, they proved that the best love stories don't follow the rules. They break them. Here's what I want you to take away. The things you think will destroy you often free you. Graham thought losing his empire would end him. It saved him. Love requires sacrifice, but what we sacrifice is often what was destroying us anyway. Graham's empire was a glass cage. Madeline set him free. Second chances come to those brave enough to choose truth over image. They could have hidden, lied, or played the game. They chose honesty, and honesty built something real. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in Graham's position? Empire or love? Drop your answer in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between what looked good and what felt true? Share your story below. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, if you felt something, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose differently. Subscribe to Love and Luxury for more stories about fate, second chances, and love that changes everything. We're building a community here of people who believe in happy endings earned through courage. This is Dr. Mason, reminding you that the best love stories aren't written in contracts, they're written in courage. Choose love over luxury, or find both. But never sacrifice your humanity for success. Until next time, keep believing in second chances. Keep choosing truth. Keep loving impossibly. This is Love and Luxury. See you in the next story.